What's going on? We're about to go live. I got a little, I warmed up this ginger turmeric shot from scratch. It's got like mint in it, and it has, what else I put in there? I put a little oregano leaves, some thyme, a little bit of black pepper, cayenne, lemon. It's all for that digestion. Because sometimes when you come back to the States, you feel a bit bloated, you know what I'm saying? So I had to make myself a little tonic. And I got tired of buying those little ginger shots. They're like $5. I was like, nah. I looked at the ingredients. I was like, oh my God, I could just make this at home. Forget about it. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of preparation to do it. But I'm starting to feel like it's soothing to kind of like gather all the ingredients and on a Sunday just chill, put some tunes in the background or whatever I'm listening to, and really take the time to put it together. And it's actually quite soothing to do that. So today is day 5. Yesterday was day 4, and it was me and Lily. We were doing plants, shenanigans, and unpopular opinions. And today, day 5, we're going to talk about the 3 choices of life. And I feel like unless you identify these 3, I just gave one of them away, the 3 C's of life. Unless you identify these 3 C's and start to incorporate them in your life, then there's not going to be any forward momentum. And I think sometimes things can get really blurry for folks when they're trying to, make some changes or create more forward momentum in their lives, and they're not sure where to start or how to get that going. And if you keep these 3 C's in mind, it could help you to navigate that, help you reflect a little bit, especially to see, okay, where am I at in the first 3, the second 3, and the third? Where am I in the first C, the second C, and the third C? And that kind of helps you to make some decisions, right? And so the first C is choice. I hear from a lot of people who say that I don't have a choice. This is how it is. That's it. Those are all my options. And I really just, I don't buy into that as much anymore. Now that I've sort of, gone through my healing process, and I know it's a process because I used to think that for myself. I remember when I had graduated from college and I got my first job. I was so excited. It was with the Big Brothers Association. And I remember getting that offer letter, and I think it was like $29,000. Now, mind you, this was back in the late 90s. I'm outing myself and my age. And I was just like, wow, this is it, huh? And I kind of just accepted that. I accepted that offer. I don't even think I counter offered or anything. And I worked there. And then after about like a year to 2 years, I was like, yeah, this isn't it. And at the time, I didn't feel like I had choice. But I realized, okay, let me just go back to school and get another degree so I can make more money. Because the field that I was in, you had to just get more degrees at that point. That's at least what I thought, right? I felt like I didn't have a choice. And often people who feel like they don't have a choice, they're usually in survival mode. And then when you're in survival mode, it's really hard to see all the options or all the opportunities that are around you. It's kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it goes from survival mode, like food, shelter. Those things have to be put in place before you can actually go through the process of self-actualization, go through the process of really achieving the things that you need to do. And so if those things aren't taken care of, it's kind of hard to move through that process. And most folks who are trying to make that change in their lives have to figure out how to get out of the survival mode. And usually when you're in survival mode, you're looking at the world through the lens of your nervous system, right? Whether it's like fight, flight, or fight, flight, or freeze. And so when you're looking through the world through those kinds of lenses, you're not going to feel like you have options. And I think the reason that we feel that way is because the way that the structure of society is built, right? Especially if you come from certain cultural dynamics that, children don't have a voice, that sort of thing. And you're pretty much groomed to believing that you don't have a choice. And so you go from your family dynamics, and then you go into the school system, You can't even choose the friend you sit next to, right? You can't even choose how you sit. You can't choose when you eat, those kinds of things. So our choices have been sort of ripped from us since we've been created, right? Since we came out the womb. And so it's very easy to see how people believe that to be the case. And then you go out as an adult and you still stay with that story that you have no choice. And that's false. I think what happens is that sometimes making the choice could be very difficult for people, right? Because it could be scary to make a decision. It could be scary to think that, like, what if I make, quote unquote, the wrong choice? It could also be scary if you have to make that choice alone. What if I don't have any support in that choice? And so I always say that, like, part of regaining or reclaiming your power is to connect to the fact that you do have a choice. And sometimes those decisions that we make, we may not like them, right? I always say there's a solution to every situation. We may not like that solution, but there is. And so the question is, are you willing to live with that choice? And how does that compare to how you're living now? And a question I like to pose my clients is, like, how is not making the choice working for you? How is it not changing your life? Or how are you benefiting from it? And well, the benefit is like the comfort, right? Being able to kind of stay within that comfort zone. And so it's so important to sit down and realize, okay, what is preventing me from making that choice? To dig a little bit deep, right? Is it fear, self-doubt, insecurities? Do I need to connect with somebody? Do I need to sort of work through my fears? Because in order for a change to take place, the choice needs to be had. And I had a coach that one day told me, being a Libra that I am, I get a little bit indecisive. And I have to work through just sort of making decisions. And then there are times when I'm really impulsive and I'll make a decision and then just see where it goes. But this coach I had told me that decisions are just feedback. And there's no right or wrong decisions. And when she said that, I felt so liberated, because I was like, that makes sense. You know, the right or wrong is the judgment that we place on it. That's like the human subjectivity. But the decision itself is not right or wrong. And so I always tell my clients, the quicker that you can make a decision, the quicker that you can get feedback from that decision so that you can adjust and tweak. Because the worst thing that you can do is just remain in limbo. Remaining in limbo is not fun. It can cause a lot of anxiety. And usually what's required is like forward movement, right? Because when you're just standing there and you're in limbo, it just doesn't feel so good. And sometimes some decisions need to be delayed. So it's not a one size fit all kind of situation. What's going on, Lily? Yep, back at it again. And sometimes decisions, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, what I was saying was, like, yeah, it depends, right? Because some decisions need to be delayed and they need a bit more thought. But give yourself a deadline of that churning process, because a lot of us are overthinkers. I can be an overthinker. I could think myself right out of a decision. But give yourself a deadline to make that decision. And part of making that decision is trusting yourself in that process and knowing that you know what's best for you. And always when you're ready to make a decision, especially if it's a little bit scary or if it's like you're making some big moves, just be mindful of who you share that with, because some people aren't really ready to understand your vision. They don't see it the way that you see it, and they don't feel it the way that you feel it. And most people have their own projections, right? So, I'm not going to share something with somebody who's constantly fearful. I'm not going to share something like when I was really just heavy in the travel world, people had all these opinions about traveling overseas. Don't go here, don't go there. And they've never been on a plane. They've never been on a plane. How are you going to tell me what is safe, what is not safe, if you haven't experienced it, right? So be mindful of where the quote unquote advice is coming from and who is saying it. And do they even have the quote unquote qualifications to say these things, So I don't pay any people no mind, because most people are in fear-based or lack sort of mentality. And I get it, because we live in a fear-based lack society. So to actually live outside of that structure is pretty radical. So the first thing, choice. You do have a choice. Let's recap. You do have a choice. The question is, what is preventing you from making that choice? And dig deep. And the next C that I like for folks to think about is, again, chances. So you have to make a choice, and then you have to take a chance, or change is not going to happen, okay? And a lot of folks that are risk averse, they are risk averse, and I get it. I totally get it. I'm someone who might take a little while. I'm a cautious risk taker. I might have to do a little bit of research before I take the leap. And it's okay to be a cautious risk taker. But to live your life without any risk, that's, life is meant to be lived. It means you're just not living. You're not transforming your ideals. You're not transforming yourself. And so if you're not taking those risks, how are you sort of growing in the process, right? And if you surround yourself with other people who don't take risks, so guess what? You'll never get the chance to see what things might be for you. And I look back on my life, and the sort of risks that I took led me to something so beautiful and so great. So like when I took that risk to go overseas, I didn't know anybody living over in Thailand. I didn't know anybody at all. I didn't know the language, but I took the risk, and I'm so glad I did, because it literally catapulted my healing journey. When I took the risk and joined this random retreat in 2016, I didn't know anybody, and I also didn't know anybody who was doing the things that I was doing. I didn't know anybody who went on retreats and invested that much money on themselves. And for me, it was $1,500 for a weekend. It was a lot of money for me at the time. But I took that risk. Had I not taken that risk, I would have never met Lily, who's my co-facilitator for the retreats. And that was also the catalyst to my healing journey. So I feel like there needs to be a level of risk taking, and part of that is redefining what it means to take a risk. And again, the question I always ask is, how is not taking a risk working out for you? Right? Sometimes ripping off the Band-Aid, I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person. Sometimes you're not able to rip the Band-Aid off, but can you take a little bit step closer? Can you do something on a very small micro level that will allow you to sort of experience what it feels like to be a little risky? Right. And I think, risk has such a negative connotation through it because of how society has structured that word. But what I call it is just being bold. It's just being courageous. In what ways can you be a bit more bold in your life? Whether it's, speaking up for yourself, asking for the things that you need, saying no to the things that you don't need. You've got to take that chance, because without that chance, there will be no change. Change isn't easy, and it's not comfortable. In the beginning, it's going to be a bit bumpy, but the more that you stretch that muscle, the more it flows. It really does. But you have to train yourself to do some of these things. And so one of the things that we talked about on our live yesterday, hopefully you go get a chance to check it out, but to put yourself in circumstances that make you feel uncomfortable. One of the things that I wanted to get better at was public speaking. And so what did I do? I joined Toastmasters, the old school. If you're familiar with Toastmasters, I did that for a little bit. I even did improv. So find ways and situations that feel a little bit nerve-wracking for you, and imagine how beautiful you're going to turn out on the other side, right? I always say use fear as a compass for your expansion versus using fear as a restriction and a confirmation for your limitations, right? Because we're always looking for evidence for our limitations. We're always holding on, fighting for our limitations. We just be fighting for them. And we really have to work on letting that go. And a lot of that is through self-reflection and just doing an audit of your life and finding the areas that you would like a bit more growth in, and taking the necessary baby steps to make that happen. Carisha said, that's me right now hanging out in DR, soaking about 30 words max. Yeah, I'm jealous you over there in the beach, enjoying that DR sun. Be there soon, well, in a few months. But yeah, so the 3 C's of life, let's recap. You got to make a choice, okay? There's no change without making a decision. Number 2, you have to take a chance, right? There's no change without chances and risks. And then number 3, you will benefit from those risks. And move at your own pace, because everybody has a different journey, as we're supposed to, because we're all here to learn very different things, right? And be open to what those things are. Be open to getting out of your own way and stepping aside. Because, you know, what happens is, like, our egos, whenever we're ready to try something new, our egos is going to try to hold on. It's going to tell you a bunch of stories about, like, why this can't work, why you shouldn't do that. The ego is going to fight for you. Your ego is like your, I don't like using this term, but for this metaphor, your ego is like your ride or die. It is your ride or die. And at some point, you have to reshape that relationship, because, you know, Carl Jung always says the first half of our lives is to understand the ego and develop the ego. And then the last half of our life is to let it go. Right? And some of you have said that. You know, I have people all the time say, oh, my ego is just getting in the way. My ego's telling me to do this and that. And it's time to let that ego go. Okay? All right, that's all I got for y'all for day 5. I'll be back tomorrow for day 6. And thank you for watching. Make sure, let me know how you're going to, you know, do the 3 C's of life. What choices do you need to make? What risks are you willing to take? And what changes are you hoping to experience as a result? Take care, y'all.